Welcome back, everybody. I got a few things I want to discuss today, so let's just jump on in. First on tap, let's talk potatoes. Mr. Potato Head was in the news thanks to Hasbro. Hasbro recently announced they'd be dropping the Mr. and Mrs. from the box art of Mr. Potato Head before walking that back just a few hours later. Now look, folks, it's a potato. It's already gender neutral or gender non-conforming despite the Mr. or Mrs. that's on the box art. And like I said, it's not going away anyway. Don't believe me? Here's the new box art that Hasbro has announced. Now, how is it already gender neutral or non-conforming? Because you can put a mustache on a potato with earrings on it if you want. Or you can have a potato with red lips and regular ears. Or if you're so inclined, you can have a force-sensitive stormtrooper with a breathing apparatus and an electronic accessory on your potato. This is mine. Almost forgot to mention the tongue as one ear, the teeth as the other. Or you could do something crazy like this. Now I'm kind of bummed out that this doesn't work. Hey, maybe Hasbro should have fixed this before they released it. Whatever I decide to do, it's not wrong, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Nobody's gonna care either. I'm looking at you, Hasbro. It's amazing what companies will do to get their name in the spotlight and to get you to spend more money at them. Moving on. Now, Debris is a new show coming from NBC on March 1st. When I first saw the trailer for this show, I immediately thought about Fringe. Now, why did I think about Fringe? Two agents working for a government agency investigating strange events having to do with debris falling to Earth. So we have two government agents. The government agency isn't mentioned in the trailer. Investigating strange events, might we say fringe events? And pieces of something that are falling to Earth that are causing these strange events. There were pieces of a device that had to be put together in Fringe as well. So this is all very similar to Fringe. So I decided, after seeing the trailer and thinking about it for a little bit, to do a little bit of research on the show. It turns out it's created, written, and co-executive produced by J.H. Wyman. Who's J.H. Wyman? J.H. Wyman was the executive producer, writer, and director of Fringe. And I think that explains why it has such a similar premise to Fringe. Am I saying it's not original? Not at all. I'm simply saying that since it's coming from the same person, it's naturally going to have some of the same concepts as that other show. Time will tell whether it's a good show or not. I've already watched the first 10 minutes. You can watch that on NBC. I'm looking forward to watching the entire episode so I can get a better feeling for whether or not I'll like the show. I don't know if I'll watch the whole thing or not, but I'll at least watch the first episode. And once again, moving on. So finally last week, Fry's Electronics announced that they were going out of business. Now all I have to say about that is, freaking finally! Now before I get into why I say that, I want to address something I saw on KTLA the day that Fry's announced they were going out of business. Fry's Electronics, the go-to chain for tech tinkerers looking for an obscure part, is closing for good. I'm sorry, what? The go-to chain for tech tinkerers looking for an obscure part? I'm probably what KTLA would consider a tech tinkerer. And I have a bunch of friends who would probably be considered tech tinkerers as well. None of us have ever gone to Fry's Electronics looking for an obscure part. Why? Because Fry's never carried obscure parts. Micro Center carried obscure parts. We always went there, or we always told people if they needed an obscure part, think something old, like a SCSI card and cables. Go to Micro Center for that, not Fry's Electronics. Fry's Electronics always had the regular computer parts that constantly failed. Now getting back to my original statement, I hated Fry's. They had the worst customer service, you were taking a chance every time you bought something there, and the return process was horrible. Let's start with customer service. If you can't find something or you need help finding something, that's what the employees are there for, right? Not at Fry's. They'd rather spend time socializing with each other than doing their jobs. Now, I personally never experienced their bad customer service because when I was shopping there, I always knew where everything was. and I never needed anything that was locked up. But a good friend of mine once needed some memory for his computer. He went to Fry's and patiently waited for one of their sales guys to be available. But the guy was so busy socializing with his coworkers that he eventually just grabbed the keys off the shelf, because they were always hanging there, unlocked the cabinet, and grabbed the part himself. When the sales guy asked, "What are you doing?" he simply responded with, "Your job." Now, like I said, I never experienced that myself, so that isn't what turned me off of them. Let's move on to the risks you took when buying computer parts there. A friend's dad bought a motherboard from there many years ago. He got it home and discovered markings all throughout the manual. The packaging also appeared as though someone else had opened it. There were no markings on the box detailing that it was an open box item either. Since he didn't want to deal with someone else's problem, he decided to simply return it. Another friend once returned a computer part that didn't work as well. When he returned it, the return counter simply tossed it in the box behind him. He asked them, "Don't you need to mark that so people know it's been returned?" The guy simply shrugged and gave him his refund. Now again, I never bought any computer parts from Fry's, but all these stories made it so I never wanted to either. I was getting parts from a small mom and pop and Micro Center at the time, and that was good enough for me. Finally, let's talk about the return process. Something that you had to think about every time you bought some kind of electronics from Fry's was, do I want to stand in line to return this? You had a 50-50 chance of having to return something, so this was something you had to think about. You also had to plan to get to Fry's in the morning, otherwise you were going to stand in a very long return line. The return line at Fry's is like the drive-thru line at In-N-Out. It's always long. Sometimes it's less long than others, but it's always long. And once you returned your product, you had to get in another line to get your refund. Why? Because the return counter didn't issue the refund, so you had to take your paperwork to the checkout line and get your refund there. Also, my sister once bought a stereo there. It broke within a year, so she took it back to get it repaired. She may have had the extended warranty that they offer you when you buy something like that. Fry's had it for 2 weeks. When she got it back, it was still broken, so she returned it again. They had it for 2 more weeks. She got it back again, still broken. She took it back a third time. They had it for 2 more weeks. When she got it back, it was still broken. At that point, I'm pretty sure she demanded a refund. The point is, they were horrible at fixing things, and the return process was a pain. Now, there were some good aspects of Fry's. You could buy CDs and DVDs, books, and anything that wasn't electronic without really having to worry about having to return it. And they had really cheap prices on all those things. But that meant that about half the store was off limits. And of course, there were always alternatives to some of those places. Like, who buys CDs anymore? Everyone gets everything online for much cheaper through Amazon or Google or Apple. Same thing with DVDs and Blu-rays. Everybody gets movies digitally these days. Probably Costco, if you have a membership, is much more convenient than Fry's, considering that Costco has locations all over the place, and Fry's had like 2 in Southern California, maybe 3. I can't remember exactly. So while I'm sad for the employees who are suddenly finding themselves out of work, I've never been happier to hear about a business going out of business. It would be one thing to hear about isolated instances of bad service, but practically everybody I know, including myself, experienced their bad service at one time or another. So good riddance to Fry's Electronics. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. If you liked it, please be sure and subscribe, and let me know what your thoughts are on all the stories I've mentioned in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button and be sure to hit that notification bell so you get notified of future videos. And we'll see you in the next one.